Chapter 4. The Young Girl as Commodity. The young girl isn't as worried about possessing the equivalent of what she's worth on the marketplace of desire as she is about assuring herself of her value, which she wants to know with certitude and precision, according to the 1,000 signs remaining for her to convert into what she'll call her seduction potential. In other words, her mana. She who has not found a way to give herself will find a way to sell herself.
How to be sexy without coming across as a bitch.
The value of the young girl is not based on some interior or simply intrinsic ground, but solely on her exchangeability. The value of the young girl only becomes apparent in her relation to other young girl. This is why she is never alone. In making the other young girl her equal in value, she puts herself into relation with herself as a value. In putting herself into relation with herself as value, she differentiates herself from herself as a singular being. Representing itself as something differentiated from itself, it begins to show itself in reality as a commodity. Karl Marx. The young girl is the commodity that insists on being consumed at every instant, because at every instant she becomes more obsolete. The young girl doesn't contain within herself that for which she is desired, her publicity. The young girl is an absolute. She is bought because she has value. She has value because she is bought. The tautology of commodities. The young girl is the one who has preferred to become a commodity, rather than passively suffer its tyranny. In love, as in the rest of this society, nobody is expected to ignore his or her own value. The young girl is the place where products and the human coexist in an apparently non-contradictory manner. The world of the young girl evinces a singular sophistication, in which reification has made added progress. In it, human relations mask market relations, which mask human relations.
You deserve better than that guy or chick.
The young girl inhabits the spectacle just like a woman in the primitive world, as an object of advertising. But the young girl is also the subject of advertising, exchanging itself. This schism in the young girl is her fundamental alienation, to which is added the following drama. Whereas exogamy effectively maintained permanent ties between tribes, the young girl's mana slips through her fingers. Her advertising fails, and it is she herself who suffers the consequences. The young girl is lost in her price. That's all she is now, and she's sick to her stomach. Shame for the young girl doesn't come from being bought, but rather from not being bought. She derives glory from her value, and even more glory from putting a price on herself. Nothing is less personal than the personal value of the young girl. It isn't rare that, through an abusive language that slowly becomes an abusive reality, the owners of a unique or precious object develop an affection for a thing, and finally claim to love it, even to love it a lot. Likewise, some love a young girl. Of course, if it was true that was the case, they would all die of sorrow. The young girl sets in motion the self-commodification of what is beyond the market, the auto-estimation of the estimatable.
Oh, nah, what's on the first date?
The personal value of the young girl is simply the price at which she is willing to be exchanged, and it is the reason on which she enters an exchange so rarely, in order to increase her value. The young girl sells her existence like a private service. The young girl continues to count out the incalculable she gives. In the exchange initiated by the young girl, the personal is traded against the personal on the train of the impersonal marketplace. The young girl, by nature bothered by love, only allows herself to be approached conditionally, conclusively, or with a sale in mind. Even when she seems to abandon herself completely, she only abandons the part of herself that is under contract, preserving or reserving the liberty she hasn't alienated. Because the contract can never subjugate the entirety of the person selling herself, some portion of her must always remain outside the contract, precisely to contract with others. The object character of love, in its current incarnation, cannot be explained more clearly, or with greater verisimilitude. From this one could conclude that the absoluteness of the relationship has been perverted from the onset, in that, in mercantile society, there is indeed commerce between beings, but never a veritable community, never a knowledge that is more than an exchange of good procedures, be they as extreme as inconceivable. Power relations in which it is the one who pays or supports who is dominated, frustrated by his very power which measures only his impotence. Maurice Blanchot, the unavowable community.
Hold on tight!
The young girl remains at all times the staunch owner of her body. She is a waitress, model, publicist, or promoter. Today, the young girl sells her power of seduction, the way her labor power used to be sold. Every success in seduction is essentially a failure for, just as we do not buy a commodity, but rather a commodity that wants to be bought. It is not a young girl we seduce, but rather a young girl who wants to be seduced. The broker of a fairly singular brand of transaction, the young girl trains all of her efforts towards achieving a good fuck. The diversity of social, geographic, or morphological constraints weighing on each grouping of human organs that the young girl encounters, are not sufficient to explain her differential positioning among competing products. Their exchange value is neither based on any singular expression, nor on any substantial determination that could truly be made equivalent, not even through the powerful mediation of the spectacle. The value is therefore not determined by some imaginary natural factors, but rather by the sum of labor furnished by each individual in order to render himself recognizable in the vitreous eyes of the spectacle, that is, in order to produce himself as the signs of the qualities recognized by alienated advertising, and which are never, finally, but synonyms for submission. The young girl's primary skill, arranging for her own scarcity. Relaxing for the young girl consists in knowing exactly what she's worth.
What an insult! Rejected by an old guy!
The young girl is never worried about herself, but only about her value. Thus when she encounters hatred, she is struck by doubt. Has her market value dropped? If it were worth it to them to speak, young girls would say, our use value may interest men, but it does not belong to us as objects. What does belong to us as objects, however, is our value. Our own intercourse as commodities proves it. We relate to each other merely as exchange values. Karl Marx, Capital.
Seduce usefully. Don't just waste your time attracting just anybody.
The young girl relates to herself in the same way that she relates to all of the products with which she surrounds herself.
Don't you value yourself like that?
For the young girl, it is first and foremost a matter of making herself worth something. Just as an object acquired by a certain sum of money becomes pathetic compared to the infinite virtualities that this sum contained, the sexual object that the young girl possesses is but a deceptive crystallization of her seduction potential. Actual sex is but a poor objectification of all the coitus that she could just as well engage in. The young girl's derision of all things is the mark of a religious intuition that has fallen into the wrong infinitude. The young girl is the most authoritarian commodity in a world of authoritarian commodities. The one that nobody can fully possess, that nevertheless pleases you and can be withdrawn from you at any moment. The young girl is the commodity that claims to single out its acquirer's sovereignty. The young girl lives at home among commodities, which are her sisters. The absolute triumph of the young girl reveals that sociality shall henceforth be the most precious, most prized commodity of all. What characterizes the imperial period, that of the spectacle and biopower, is that the young girl's own body takes on the form of a commodity that belongs to her. On the other hand, it is only at this moment that the commodity form of human beings becomes generalized. Karl Marx. The vitrified aspect of the face of the young girl must be explained by her status as a commodity. She is the crystallization of a certain quantity of labor spent to put her in accordance with the norms of certain types of exchange. And in the form of the young girl's appearance, which is also that of a commodity, is characterized by the obscuring, if not the voluntary forgetting, of this concrete labor. In the young girl's love life, a relationship between things takes the phantasmagorical form of a relationship between singular beings. With the young girl, it is not only the commodities take hold of human subjectivity, it is human subjectivity that first reveals itself as the interiorization of commodities. One has to think that Marx didn't have the young girl in mind when he wrote that commodities cannot go to market and make exchanges of their own account. Originality is part of the young girl's system of banality. It is in this concept that allows herself to make all singularities equivalent as pure, empty singularities. In her eyes, all nonconformity takes place in a kind of nonconformist conformity.
My boyfriend's a poet.
It is always surprising to see how the theory of comparative advantage, developed by Ricardo, is more fully verified in the commerce of young girls than in that of inert goods. It is only in exchange that the young girl attains her value. From the provinces, from the suburbs, or from rich neighborhoods, insofar as they're young girls, all young girls are equivalent. A commodity is the materialization of a relation. The young girl is its incarnation. In our time, the young girl is the commodity most in demand, the human commodity. Within the mode of unveiling of the commodity, in which beauty unveils nothing of its own, appearance having become autonomous of all essence, the young girl, no matter what she does, cannot escape giving herself to just anyone.
Whatever. If not her, then someone else.
The laws of the market have been individualized in the young girl. What they still call love is nothing but fetishism attached to a particular commodity, the human commodity. The eye of the young girl carries within it the effective entering into equivalence of all places, all things, and all beings. Thus, the young girl can consciously reduce everything that enters her field of perception to something she already knows from alienated advertising. This is what her language is continually translating, full as it is of the
like, kinda,
and other
stuff.
The young girl is a central aspect of what negrists call the putting to work of desire and effect forever, dazzled as they are by this world of commodities, in which they still find nothing worthy of reproach.
Seduction. Learn, love, marketing. You dream about him, he doesn't notice. Snagging with the lots of marketing. No man can resist a well-conceived marketing campaign, especially if the product is you.
Where the spectacle reigns, the value of the young girl is immediately effective. Her beauty itself is felt as executive power. In order to conserve her scarcity value, the young girl must sell herself only at the highest price, which signifies that she must usually give up selling herself. Thus, as we often see, the young girl is an opportunist, even in abstinence.
Because I'm worth it.
In classical economic terms, we have to admit that the young girl is a giffen good, or giffenian, that is, an object as opposed to what usually takes place, whose demand rises the more expensive it is. This category includes luxury goods, of which the young girl is certainly the most vulgar. The young girl never allows herself to be possessed as a young girl in the same way that a commodity never allows itself to be possessed as a commodity, but only as a thing.
You can be pretty, surrounded by friends, pestered with pickup lines, and yet alone inside.
The young girl only exists as a young girl within this system of general equivalency and its massive circulatory movement. She is never possessed for the same reason that she is desired. The very moment one acquires her, she is taken out of circulation. The mirage fades. She sheds her magic aura and her nimbus of transcendence. She's stupid, and she reeks. The modern world is not universally prostitutional for the sake of luxury. It would be incapable of that. It is universally prostitutional because it is universally interchangeable. Charles Bugui, non conjoint. The young girl is the universal beneficiary of all the pseudo-concreteness of this world, and of the pseudo-objectivity of coitus, first of all. The young girl would like to be a thing, but does not want to be treated like a thing. Yet all her distress comes not only from the fact that she's treated like a thing, but that on top of that she can't manage to really be a thing.
No, my body is not a piece of merchandise. It's a tool for work.
The appalling thing isn't that the young girl is fundamentally a whore, but that she refuses to perceive herself as such. Because the whore, being not only she who is bought, but also she who sells herself, is the maximalist figure of liberty among commodities. The young girl is a thing to the very extent that she takes herself to be human. She's a human being to the very extent that she takes herself to be a thing. The whore represents the most eminent saintlessness in a world of commodities can conceive of.
Be yourself. It pays.
One ruse of market thinking would have it appear that what she contains that is not on the order of commodities, what is authentic or good about her, determines the young girl's value. The young girl is a crisis of coherence that shakes the very bowels of consumer society. She responds to the imperative of the total commodification of existence, to the necessity of making sure nothing will remain outside of the commodity form in what we still call, euphemistically, human relations. The mission she has been given is to re-enchant a devastated world of commodities, of prolonging the disaster with joy and insouciance. She inaugurates a form of second-degree consumption, the consumption of consumers. If we give credence to appearances, which have become legitimate in many cases, we would have to say that the commodity has achieved, through the young girl, the total annexation of the non-commodity. The young girl's ass represents the last bastion of illusion of a use value which has so manifestly disappeared from the surface of existence. The irony, of course, is that this value is still itself an exchange. Within the spectacle, we can say of the young girl what Marx remarked about money, calling it a special kind of commodity that is set apart from other commodities by a common act, and which serves to expose their reciprocal value.